I think I am live now. Can someone confirm if I'm live? One okay. Okay. Hi, Heath. Thank you so much. Actually, this is my first time, and I'm trying to do it through OBS. The entire live thing is new, and I also took a major risk by using a different streaming platform. Can you please let me know if my volume is good? I mean, my voice, or if there is any disturbance or something like that. Talk. Is my voice audible? Okay, cool. Thank you. So, I hope there is no disturbance. I think it's good to get started by now. So basically, some of the as I said, thanks for joining, and I'm the entire editing of this videos is consuming too much of time. So I thought it will be better to kind of try out this live streaming once in a while, and especially I think it will be good to connect with some of those people who would want to have this chart reading. Maybe just they might not have a huge thing or something major that is pressing, but they would like to know an answer for one or two things. So, and sometimes they may not be able to afford an astrological consultation. So I thought it will be good to kind of catch up with some of those people who would take advantage of this, and maybe this entire forecast session will be useful. I've never done this kind of a forecasting before, but I think it will be useful for people to kind of have this astrological weather update as far as the collective consciousness and our life is concerned. So as far as the August transits are concerned, so let's jump right into it. Like, we started with the full moon, which is kind of an auspicious thing. Like, it's always good to start with the full moon. That doesn't mean that it kind of derails over the next 15 days and then picks up. But um, it's good to know that we start at a culmination or at a rising point. As I said in my full moon video, the full moon happened in Shravana Nakshatra. So Shravana is all about hearing and observing. So this entire phase of 15 days or the 4, now we just have 10 days to go. I'm a little late in my forecast because of various challenges in my own life. So Shravana is all about listening and to, so which indicates that this is a major period of observing rather than verbalizing our opinions, because it's easier to kind of get into this argument or whenever we are passionate about something, we tend to get into some kind of an argument, although it doesn't sound like we are arguing. For us, the person on the other side might end up feeling argued, and this is not necessarily the time for that, especially given the fact that Mars is in Leo, and Mars in fire sign in Leo especially is going to push the boundaries in terms of moving forward, so breaking the barriers and moving forward, like we have never before. But this is a season of retrogrades, and although we want to move forward with whatever we are doing in our life, it will be essential to take this momentary pauses and have these moments of self-reflection, precisely because of the fact that Saturn is retrograde and Venus is retrograde. Mercury is about to go retrograde in another 18 or 19 days, and Mercury will enter this shadow period sometime in another next 10 days. So all this is, it's a season of retrogrades. We have 3 planets retrograde in 1 month, and then Jupiter will go retrograde as Sun enters into Leo by the middle of this month, that is on 16th or 17th of August. So 4 planets will be retrograde at the same time. So it's quite an interesting period. So I don't want to kind of qualify this period as a negative period, but I really want to make sure that we all understand the importance and the significance of this period. Retrograde, as many wise astrologers have already said, it's all about review, reassess, and maybe reorganize some of the things that we are doing in our life, especially if we consider the rulerships and placements of Venus in our chart, or Mercury in our chart, or Saturn in our chart, and maybe in another 20 days Jupiter in our chart. So we may have to revisit those areas of life and try to reorganize or refine the topics that are related to that particular area of our life. So as I said, August is basically an extremely eventful month as far as the transits go. So let's state first, like Mars ingresses into Virgo on 16th of August. So I'll give the dates first, so we are clear into what we are entering into, and anyone who is watching live will have an idea of what we are going to see through the hour or so. So Mars ingresses into Virgo on 16th of August, and Sun ingresses into Leo on 17th of August, which is major ingress for this month. And Mercury is going retrograde on 25th of August. And Mercury retrograde is not new for us, and we know some people actually blow Mercury retrograde out of proportion. But I think we also need to take note of Mercury's retrograde period, and we should not take it lightly as well. But it's important to consider some of those things so that we can be aware of what is happening. It's not about being safe, so it's not like Saturn Mars opposition, or Saturn nodes conjunction or something like that. So it's a normal thing. So we face it 3 or 4 times a year, and by now we will be equipped in terms of how to handle this Mercury's retrograde phase. And Venus is already retrograde, but Venus ingresses into Cancer on 10th of August, which is a significant shift, because a planet that goes retrograde in a sign and then retrogrades, ingresses into another sign that it actually traveled throughout the period of past 1.5 or even 2 months, we may have to revisit all those areas of life. So I'll come back to Venus retrograde in a while, but I'm just trying to give a summary of what we have seen over the past 1.5 2 months, and we may have to relive those periods, especially those areas that are connected to Venus, and also the Cancer and Leo areas of our life. So it will be necessary to analyze uh, the conditions and the significance of Cancer and Leo in your natal chart at this particular point of time. So that's something that we need to note. And the new moon is on August 16th, and another full moon is on 31st of August. So it's basically we have two full moons in August itself, that is on 1st of August and 31st of August. So maybe we can consider it as the September full moon. It's almost September, so that's good thing. Like we start the month with a full moon, and we also end the month in full moon, which is a full circle. It's an interesting thing, and we started the full moon in Shravana Nakshatra. I mean, we started the August with the full moon in Shravana Nakshatra in Aquarius, and it actually ends in Shravana Nakshatra in Aquarius, which is a fantastic thing to see. So I think it started in Capricorn, so now it's Aquarius. So it's a good round to have. So it's kind of a full circle, like we are kind of experiencing here. So it's Shravana is in Capricorn. Sorry, I misstated as Aquarius. So like. So again, let's begin with Venus retrograde in Cancer. I already mentioned that. I mean, we need not consider halting or stopping things that we are already doing, but it will be important to reorganize or reassess and review some of our progress that we have made over the past few days, in order to ensure that we are on the right track towards achieving the promise of this year. I mean, we all have kind of set notions or some kind of goals, be it a bigger goal or a smaller goal. We all have something that we have in mind, and we need to take care of those things during this year. So we need to make some progress, and retrograde is a good period to kind of review and reassess what we have done. So Venus retrograde, Venus is all about relationships, right? So speaking from mundane astrology point of view, if you look at the history, unfortunately bridges have collapsed a lot during Venus retrograde in Leo and Cancer. So it happened in 2015 in Netherlands. I think a bridge collapsed in India very recently during Venus retrograde, and probably even in some other part of the world. I don't exactly remember which place. In August of 2015, some kind of bridge collapsed in Netherlands, and in August of 2007, when Venus was retrograde in Leo and while it was moving back to Cancer, a bridge collapsed in Minneapolis, and then in Baltimore in August of 1999. So we are talking about this Venus retrograde in Leo moving back to Cancer. So it's an interesting thing to remember, not necessarily a good one. So how we can connect this to natal astrology is bridge. Bridge is basically connecting two spots or points, and the vehicles travel on that bridge, so that whatever is there under the bridge can move on without any difficulty or whatever it is. So that is the thing. And unfortunately, if you look back or try and analyze the Venus retrograde period, bridges have always kind of majorly collapsed during when Venus was maltreated or afflicted in the transit. So this is not new. So most probably after the retrograde is over, Venus will enter Virgo, which is the sign of its debilitation. So around October or probably even November, again we will see some of these things like bridges collapsing or liaison breaking or collaborations coming to end or something like that. So if we relate this to natal astrology, Venus is all about relationships and union. Venus is the planet of union, or Venus is the planet of mingling. So naturally, when Venus is not in its natural condition or state of motion or something like that, it will be important for us to be careful about Venusian matters of our lives. So relationships, especially Venus was in conjunction with Mars in Leo when it actually entered Leo, and that indicates friction because, as I mentioned, Venus is the planet of mingling and Mars is the planet of separation or war. So Mars basically splits things, and Venus is all about union and bringing things together, or some kind of a collaborative or a partnership effort to kind of materialize, especially when Venus is significantly active. And it also goes back to our natal charts, but in general, relationships need a little bit of overview or maybe even a deeper focus during this point of time. And Venus retrograde in Leo is one thing, and Venus retrograde in Cancer is another thing, because Cancer kind of kindles this ocean of emotions, and we all might have come out of those emotions, and we would be leading our lives in a way that we actually want to, and we might be forgetting some of our difficult past over the past 1.5, 2 months, or maybe even 3 months. But Venus going retrograde back to Cancer might actually bring back those feelings, and especially if you have just ended a relationship, you might be you might be kind of tempted to go back to that person and restart the relationship. But one thing that you need to remember is sometimes retrograde season, or the meaning of retrograde is actually letting things go and only carrying things that we actually need. So what I want to stress at this point of time is, like, relationships are karmic, not necessarily romantic relationships. So whomsoever we meet in our life is, at some point, we kind of have this karmic debt towards this person. And life is kind of a train journey. I always like this analogy. So life is kind of a train journey, and if we have to get down at one station, we have to get down, and we cannot necessarily travel with another person, and we cannot miss our station and go and get down in their station. So in that case, we would be living their life but not our life. So ideally, we need to kind of be aware of the fact that sometimes ending a relationship or moving on from a relationship is not necessarily giving up, but it's growing up. So it's a mental thing. Like, we need to put things into perspective, and we need to analyze what is good for us and what is not good for us. I mentioned in my Saturn retrograde video, like, we might have or face some of the difficulties in relationships because of poor boundaries. Boundaries are of two kinds. One is the boundary that we set for ourselves, that we shouldn't cross. And there is another boundary that we draw around ourselves, and we don't let others cross inside. So, hello. Dakini likes, hello, thanks for joining. And thanks everyone who has joined. So as I was saying, boundaries are always of two kinds. So especially when it comes to personal relationships and the self relationship, that is the relationship that we have with ourselves. One is the relationship, one is the boundary that we draw for ourselves that we shouldn't cross, and the other is the relationship with ourselves where we draw the boundary and we don't let others cross that boundary, no matter who it is. Private space or personal space is extremely important, and sometimes we get into difficulties in relationship because of poor boundaries, that we fail to kind of stick to our own boundaries, or we fail to stop someone who trespasses the boundaries and enter into our zone, and somehow they take control of our lives. So this is something that we need to focus on, especially given the larger window of Saturn's retrograde period. Saturn is limitations or boundaries. So even before Venus went retrograde, we would have known that something is not really going right in terms of relationships. Not just relationships, maybe professional partnerships or collaborations, or a relationship with a friend, or a relationship with a colleague, or whomsoever it may be. We must have felt this friction when Saturn went retrograde, or just at the stroke of Saturn's retrograde and its shadow period. But Venus went retrograde. When Venus went retrograde, and especially when Mars was debilitated in Cancer, it would have exploded. So it will be important for us to draw some limitations for ourselves that we shouldn't cross, and especially given the fact that Venus is going back into Cancer, as I mentioned, we may be tempted to restart whatever it may be with a colleague or the romantic partner or the friend or business collaborator, whosoever it is. We need to kind of make sure that we don't travel that path again, because what is not meant for us is not meant for us. And now is the perfect time for us to identify those baggages that we don't need in our lives to move forward throughout this year, for the rest of the year, and we can travel light, so that we travel fast, we travel with clarity, and we travel with conviction. And zeal and motivation will slowly increase as Mars enters into Virgo. Mars in Leo is already giving us too much of zeal and motivation and the passion to move forward. And we are kind of, Mars in Cancer for 45-50 days would have been a reasonably frustrating period in terms of channelizing our energy in wrong areas and realizing later that, oh, we did the wrong thing or something like that, or we wasted time doing this. But now is the time where we would have actually realized that we have made some mistake and we can move on. But again, it will be important not to arrive at any kind of conclusions, but we just have to keep making progress and gathering things that are coming to us that we might need in the future. So as it is, like, it's collaborations, or this Venus retrograde period would have meant many different things for many people. One could be end of relationship, and another is end of collaborations or long-standing union with some organization or an association, and maybe even long-standing union between two countries. We never know. So, Venus is a very political planet, and it indicates a lot of political or socio-political decisions that are usually represented and clearly represented by Jupiter and Saturn. But Venus kind of is a personal planet and a faster moving planet, and Venus helps in the triggering of that event. So socio-political events are very common during this period. So as we all know, in the past, political leaders or leaders of the nation have been assassinated, or they have died during the Venus retrograde period. So it's really an interesting and and a significant phase, and it might carry some meaning in our personal lives as well. There is something that is brewing that we don't know yet, but something is really taking place behind the scenes, and we might come to know as planets start moving direct, especially when Venus starts moving direct in Leo. So we will have more clarity, despite the fact that Venus will be opposed by Saturn, and Venus will obviously have to come back to the opposition with Saturn. So there is no escape from that. There will be some difficult confrontations, especially in Venusian matters of your life, and you need to analyze what Leo represents in your chart, and what Venus represents in your chart, and what Saturn represents in your chart. So this Venus Saturn opposition is always some kind of confrontation in relationships. So, for example, we let go of someone in the very near past, and if we go back and try to rekindle the relationship, we will be in a difficult place once Venus is opposed by Saturn as Venus enters Leo. So we need to go through all this, maybe 18 20ish degrees of difficulties throughout this Venus's travel of 35 to 40 days again. So my astrological advice would be to kind of not take that path, just leave that and move forward, and something better is actually waiting ahead for us. So Gandanta is basically this zone, the last 2 degrees of water sign and the first 2 degrees of a fire sign, or maybe 3 degrees. So this zone is extremely vulnerable, and because of this transition from water to fire. And Venus, it's already in Gandanta, indicating friction and arguments in relationship, unexpected ego clashes in relationship, and miscommunications in relationship. Miscommunication is not necessarily only because of Mercury, but Venus also indicates something that's related to miscommunication. When during the Saturn's opposition of Venus, we may have said something or heard something that we really did not mean, but because of the fact that we did not elaborate, or we did not explain things clearly, but we just vented out, the other person who was at the receiving end, or maybe we, if we were at the receiving end, would have completely had a wrong perception about the entire context, and that is probably a sign of miscommunication. So that's something that we need to take care of. And talking about Jupiter has just entered the 3rd decan of Aries, and Jupiter has just entered the Martian bounds or terms in Aries, which is the Egyptian bounds. So I just transitioned into talking about Jupiter, so I think it's enough about Venus. So Jupiter has just entered the terms of Mars in Aries and is slowly moving far away from the nodal axis. That is, it's going away from the conjunction with Rahu, and it's also shifting far away from this opposition with Ketu. Rahu and Ketu are the 2 points which is, we can call it as balance or we can call it as imbalance, but in general they always cause this imbalance because Rahu's obsession and Ketu's detachment. So when Jupiter was in conjunction with Rahu, we would have seen some revolutionary moves, chaos, confusions, conflicts, confrontations. We know what happened in France, where President Emmanuel Macron announced the extension of the retirement age of the employees from 62 to 64. And we know what happened later in France after a 17-year-old was shot. People gathered. So, revolutions or riots is not just about Mars. It's also about Jupiter in conjunction with Rahu. For a cause, Jupiter is. Riots are always. Maybe sometimes it's confusions, but sometimes it's for a good cause, or sometimes it's for something that is not really realistic, considering the current times that we are living in. So that's one thing. And various movements of people against the government or local body would have taken place at various countries when Jupiter was conjunct Rahu. Religious matters have come to forefront. Religious books have been burnt, and communal violences or riots or confusions have been taking place in India very recently. But there are other reasons as well. Hellenistic and medieval astrologers, I mentioned that Jupiter has just entered the terms of Mars in the sign of Aries. Jupiter has a decan in Aries. Jupiter is currently in its own decan, considering the traditional Jyotish decans. The first decan is ruled by the ruler of the sign, second by the ruler of the fifth sign, and third is the ninth sign. So Aries is the first, ruled by Mars, and the second decan will be ruled by the Sun, which is Leo, and the third decan will be ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter has just entered its own decan. Jupiter is pretty strong. On the other hand, Jupiter is placed in the Martian bounds or terms of Aries, and Mars is placed in the, currently as I am talking, Mars is placed in the 24th and 25th-ish degrees of Leo. So the trine is very close. Hellenistic and medieval astrologers always considered an aspect very powerful when the ruler of the term aspects its own term. Mars from Leo aspects its own term in Aries, thereby giving an extraordinarily strong reception to Jupiter. And on the other hand, Mars is also receiving Jupiter in its own territory, not just by terms but also by sign. So throughout this Jupiter's travel in Aries, like from 21 to 25 or maybe even 26 degrees, is quite important, but that lasts only until Mars makes its way into Virgo on 16th. So we have this very powerful period of 10 days where Jupiterian themes and Martian themes, combined with the nodes with less impact from the nodes, will come to forefront. Jupiter is religion, and Mars is battle, struggle. Mars is the planet of war. So I think we will continue to see such communal confusions or riots throughout this period of next 10 or 12 days. And we need to be very careful if we are actually very close to such happenings or such things in terms of wherever we are living. So that is one important thing that I wanted to point out. And Jupiter will also be in Bharani Nakshatra. Bharani indicates, the deity is Yama, the ruler of or the significator of death. That doesn't necessarily mean someone is going to die, but it might indicate some kind of an end to something. Governments dissolving when Jupiter is in Bharani, or major ministers resigning from their posts, religious leaders prosecuted or are kind of questioned very badly, or maybe the opposite is also possible because of the nodal axis. There might be some new revolution from some religious community. So there is this theme of religion that's going to kind of be prevalent at this point of time. On the other hand, by Navamsa, Jupiter would be in the sign of Libra for this entire month, and Venus rules Libra, and Venus is retrograde. We already know that this entire Venus retrograde is more eventful than we all actually imagined. And some of those people who are actually living through this or experiencing this in a more literal manner would kind of attest to the fact that it's been a really emotional and a tricky ride during the retrograde phase of Venus. Venus retrograde also shows eventful happenings in our lives, maybe in our relationships with the mentors, because Jupiter is in the Navamsha. By Navamsha, it's in Libra, ruled by Venus. So Jupiter is it signifies mentors or elders. So there might be some kind of reorganization or revisiting of relationship with the elders in our family. Or maybe in some unfortunate cases we might get the news of the death of some elder. Although it largely depends on the natal chart, individual natal chart. But somewhere we will see elders in our family or distant family going into this other world. So that's one thing. And Mars into Virgo. This is one of the most important things or interesting things that I wanted to point out. Mars is the planet of war, desire, and passion, while Virgo is the territory of perfectionism, analytics, and rational at the highest level. I won't say that Mars doesn't care about rational, but Mars is all about drive, passion, and the zeal to move forward. And sometimes during this period we won't see what really is very near to us, or we might miss something that's right under the nose, and we might be looking for something else that's far more difficult to gain or find out. So during this period it will be important to kind of be aware of what is happening just around us and then look beyond. The reason why I am saying this is because Mars does not have the reception from Mercury, because Mercury will be placed in Mercury will be placed in Leo, and Mercury will start its retrograde motion from the 26th degree or 27th degree of Leo, which means Mercury won't enter Virgo for the month of August. So we might have to wait for Mercury to enter Virgo for another 50 days or so. So Mars is alone. There is no reception from Mercury. So as I mentioned, Mars is the planet of war and Mercury is the planet of rational analytics. Mars can also be associated with higher technology or hardcore technology that indicates sharper things. So that is one of those things. So Virgo is perfectionism. So Mars kind of pushes us towards this perfectionism or other Virgoish traits of analytics and rationalism. But the speed of Mars is always very, it's really quick. So as I mentioned, sometimes we might actually forget what we really need to see or what really matters during this point of time and overlook this and look at something very far ahead. Parallelly, we might actually aim perfectionism. So when we cannot actually pay attention to what is close to us or something that is close to our domestic surroundings, how can we really pay attention to the perfectionism that we are seeking, which is actually a very long term thing? As I said, Mercury will not be in any form of relationship with Mars. And as we say, devil is in the details. So look for the minutest things and try to perceive things in the most exact manner possible and then react. And we may be quick to actually criticize someone for being wrong, and that also is going to backfire. So it will be essential to kind of be a little patient, and we should focus on ourselves. And again, it's not about being too harsh or extremely self-critical. That is not a good thing as well. So, but the real good thing of this entire month of August is that Mars loses its relationship with Saturn. So Saturn was opposing Mars. So Mars completely is free from Saturn as it enters Virgo on 16th or 17th of August. And Mars also loses its relationship with the nodes. I mean, this is the best thing that could happen for the Martian areas of our lives. You know, Mars was in Leo, and considering the topics of rulership and where Mars was actually, yeah, I'll surely get to the charts in a while. So I might just be done with the forecast in another 5 minutes or so. So please post your question so we can get to reading your chart in relation to the transits that are majorly happening at this point of time. Mars is a natural malefic. I know in traditional astrology things are a little defined. So Mars is a malefic planet, naturally malefic planet, and it indicates some difficult things. And Mars opposed by Saturn and another malefic, and Mars in relationship, Mars was in square with the nodes when Mars was in Cancer. That probably would have been a very emotionally very difficult period for most of us, especially those who have Mars as Time Lord or Cancer activated in their chart by some means. Yeah, sure. So Mars freeing from the clutches of the nodes and the opposition from Saturn is a very good thing. So Mars is currently in trine Jupiter, which is a good thing, and it's better that Mars is not in conjunction with Venus because it indicates more separatism. And more friction in relationships because Mars and Venus are opposing energies. So Mars in Virgo is a very perfect time for us to use the retrograde season into a perfect effect, or really very good advantage, because we are going to have this motivation and desire and passion to move forward towards the promise of this year. And as I mentioned, it's not worth it to kind of revisit the relationship that we already had. So I think it's better to kind of travel with a lighter baggage at this point of time. So Mercury, almost before entering Virgo, turns retrograde in the 26th degree of Leo towards the end of Purva Falguni Nakshatra, just before entering Uttara Falguni. Both these nakshatras indicate marriage and, you know, transitioning into marriage or rituals before or after marriage. So for those who are actually thinking about marriage, Mercury's retrogression in this particular nakshatras in the sign of Leo is not necessarily a good one to get into some kind of an agreement. I'm not saying that you should not pursue relationship. So it's always good to pursue the relationships, but I'm just saying that do not come into a conclusive agreement about a relationship. Maybe you can just wait until Venus enters Libra, or maybe Mercury until Mercury enters Virgo. So that's a good period, or maybe even Mercury in direct motion towards the end of Leo. That's not too bad as well. So that certainly, as I said, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't pursue relationships. I think this is basically what I had for August. The sun is ingressing into Leo, but I think I'll make a separate video on sun in Leo, and also I'll make a separate video on the new moon on August 16th and the full moon on August 31st. So I think that's basically it for the forecast of August. Now let's get into this chart. Can you see this chart? Thank you. Yeah, I think we'll just give a 2-minute break and get back if that's fine for those who are online. Right, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to have some water and come back. So thanks very much for waiting and sorry for holding off. So I think as of now we have one chart. So the details will be 28th of December 1971, 9:12 a.m. I don't know how to pronounce this one, but in Canada, and you have Capricorn rising 10 degrees. So maybe you would have early Aquarius rising in tropical. Is that correct? Like, does it sound like your chart? You there? Yeah, 2 degrees Aquarius. Good, cool. So this is the correct chart then. Right. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Uh, cool. So the significant transits. So let me just go to perfections. Oh, interesting. So you have Aries perfection. So you still have good 5 months to go. And Mars is your time lord. So this might have been a very interesting period, especially in terms of the fourth house matters of your life. So there must have been major, or at least some kind of changes in your domestic environment. Some kind of shifts or relocations, or some kind of health challenges. I hope not health challenges, but yeah. So this must have been a major theme, or mother would have been a theme as well, if that makes sense. So now Venus is currently in the 7th house of now Venus is currently in the 8th house of Leo. So maybe you are letting go of someone, or you're kind of redefining yourself in terms of relationships, or other fourth house matters, because Mars was fallen in your 7th house. So there must have been some kind of dealings in your relationship. That is one thing. And yeah, that's excellent. So yeah, I think Mars in Virgo, Mars in Leo. Now you're in the best of your physical fitness or something like that, as you mentioned in many years. And Rahu and Jupiter are there in your 4th house. So Rahu is going to amplify the results of your efforts, and it's also going to amplify the looks. So if you are if you aim at like 50-60% good looks, it's going to show as 80% or 90% improvement as far as looks are concerned. So that is a good thing. And now Mars is going to transit your 9th house of Virgo, and Mars is the time lord. So now Mars loses its relationship that it had with Aries, right? So all this while Mars was in sextile, when Mars was in Gemini, and It was a long time when Mars retrograded back to Taurus and then came back to Gemini. So so many things happening very quickly, taking place very quickly. Maybe all this uh, changes in yourself started happening during that point of time. So it's all about you know this self consciousness of well-being when it's the fourth house perfection, and it also indicates something related to 10th house, because it's really difficult to ignore the 10th house when fourth house is activated, and now Mars will be transiting your ninth house, and and Mars is placed in Pisces. So the most interesting thing is your natal Mars. I mean, the transiting Mars is going to oppose the natal Mars from Virgo towards. Right, no problem. So the transiting Mars is going to oppose the natal Mars, and some of your themes related to the third house or ninth house matters will come into little prominence, not superseding the fourth house matters itself. Yeah, good times. Surely, yeah, sure. But it's about self confrontation, right? Mars is energy, so maybe as you mentioned, maybe you're taking this fitness thing or weight training a little too hard on yourself. Maybe you need to kind of bring it down a notch. Uh, so that is one of the self confrontations. So third house is efforts and courage and all those things, and ninth house is religious matters. So I mean, you must be a very rational. I mean, as far as religion goes, it must be a rational kind of thing. So you must be taking good things from various, subsets of uh, the ways of life that we see as it is today. So there might be some kind of revisiting of your own spiritual thoughts, or redefining some of your spiritual thoughts, and there might be some kind of friction with the elder, or a fatherly figure or a parent or someone like that. Maybe ending a relationship with someone who was not really good to you, or something like that is surely kind of on the theme. Not necessarily a major relationship, but something minor. Maybe it's just someone whom you meet regularly at the gym, or someone like that, just like very casual relationship, not a major thing. So motherly and fatherly connections are surely there, and again, as I mentioned, I think the best part for you in August is the transiting Mars, that is the ruler of your perfected sign, is losing its relationship with Saturn and the nodes. Yeah, sadhana, original practices, exactly. So that's something that you would be doing with more zeal, but also just bring it down a notch, especially when it comes to physical activities, because I think you're already little bit of fatigue comes in here and there because of Saturn Mars opposition. Now opposing natal Mars, there is confrontation. I mean, transit Mars is going to have a say that no, I think you can just slow down a little bit and see what you can do in a more rationalistic way. Try to perfect things. I mean, do slow things, but do it perfectly. I mean, you may not be doing it wrongly, but just take it down a little slow and try to perfect the art of whatever you are doing. So that is especially if you are in if you're thinking of enrolling yourself into a course or an education or something like that. I think that will be really important and crucial. Yeah, thanks. Good advice. Yeah, I hope so. So when I see down, I'm trying to look at the chat. Okay, so please don't think that I'm losing this eye contact. It's very weird for me to kind of look at the camera when nothing is really there in front of me. So, so I think we'll move on to the next. I hope I kind of made some justice to your chart. EL has mentioned there. Uh, uh, 1963. No problem. 1963, 12 p.m. Is this rectified time or round off time, like 12 p.m.? I mean, this rounded off times always gives me this doubt or skeptic thought. uh, so Gemini rising, does that sound like your chart? Tropical Cancer rising. I don't know if you're around. Please let me know if that sounds like your chart. 20 Gemini rising. All right. No, no. I'm not questioning the time. I just want to know if this is actually your chart. So. Yeah, okay, thank you. So, the ruler of the rising sign Mercury is placed in Pisces, early Pisces. along with the Sun and Jupiter. So Mercury, although it's debilitated, I think it has reception from Jupiter. But right, so but the thing is, the confidence always comes after being demotivated or shattered at some point in your life. So the self doubt is always there, but deep inside. But I think it's good to kind of express yourself and be there on the park when it actually matters the most, because right. So So Mars is currently transiting your third house, and Saturn is retrograde in your ninth house. Yeah, Saturn is currently retrograde in your ninth house. So there is a whole lot of action that was there in your second house, and the third house, something related to family or finance. Finance would have been a little, right. Okay, you speak 7 languages. Right, that's just about Gemini. And Rahu in the second house is good for languages, foreign languages especially, and that's great. Yeah, and one more thing is, I think it's a misnomer that people who have Pisces in, I mean Mercury in Pisces, are poor in communication. I think for some reason Mercury in Pisces does not really indicate poor communication. So, and these people are surprisingly intuitive. I mean, they can surprise people with their intuitive thoughts and ideas, and their communication can be as effective and candid that someone can not imagine if an astrologer thinks that Mercury in Pisces is about poor communication. And so that's the thing. So third house, let me take a look at. So currently you are in the first house, perfection. Cool. So Mercury is your time lord. So Mercury is currently placed in Leo, which is your third house, and Mercury will retrograde in the third house itself. And anyway, I think your Saturn return is over, so that's something that you can keep it away for a while. But I think Mercury's retrogression might be an important phase, especially in terms of who you are and redefining yourself. In terms of the first house and the fourth house matters. Maybe this is the time where you feel like you want to connect with your domestic environment and you want to feel at home in one place rather than kind of wandering. uh, Maybe for various reasons you might have been moving here and there, but maybe currently you want to settle down at one place and think about feeling settled. But again, something that wants you to move is coming up or might be coming up in the near future during this year. And Saturn is in the ninth house. Saturn is currently retrograde and Saturn is in the ninth house. Saturn rules the eighth and the ninth house, and travel might not necessarily be very fruitful, especially Mercury will be opposed by Saturn and is opposed by Saturn. So travel might not be very fruitful, but some kind of a spiritual or a rejuvenation based travel might be good during this point of time. So if you want to take some time off for a month during this retrograde phase and be away from actual rational and logical things of Mercury, and try to revisit some of your inner self during this time, I think it will be very fruitful for you. So I think this entire year is about you, I mean self, the self. So you need to spend more time for yourself. In third house is short travels. You can just try to plan some short travel and then come back as soon as you can, maybe 15-20 days, or maybe just a week to kind of revisit your inner self and spend some time with the nature and get back on time to do whatever you have to do for the rest of the year. So I think that should be a really good idea, because for some reason I think you are feeling burdened, and you might be rightfully so, because of so much of happenings over the course of this year on your ascendant with Mars there, for a very long time, and then Mars going retrograde in your, Mars debilitating in your second house. And only when Mars was in Leo, you must have felt some drive or passion towards whatever you are doing. So, and again, Saturn was opposing. So, this meat grinder thing would have existed at least for 10%, although if not 70 or 80%. So it's the right time for you to focus on yourself, and it's also about something related to your work or career. The shift or change that you are expecting might not come necessarily at the time you are expecting. It might drag a little bit, or maybe if you are trying to start something new related to your work, you may just want to wait and see how things progress, and you may want to do some groundwork and wait for Mercury to enter into Virgo, if that makes sense. So with Mars entering Virgo and your perfected ruler sign, planet being Mercury, I think it's time for short travels and relocation as well. I think I'll move to the next chart. Very burdened. Yeah, that's because of various things. So I think letting go of is a very, very important advice for you. So just leave some burden from your shoulders and free up your back and travel somewhere to be close with nature and enjoy. I'm sorry to hear that you're actually feeling burdened, but I think things will change as you know. Mars' transit in fourth house is maybe you will have some realizations, you know, regarding your health, and make sure that you take care of your health and take care of yourself. Maybe you are not really giving the time that you need for yourself, and it will be better to kind of learn it the easier way than the hard way. So whatever you are burdened with, try to just let it go off if that's a possibility, or if not, try to find a way to kind of put those behind, at least for a little while, so that you can have enough time for yourself and you know concentrate on your own well-being. Allison D. 25th of June 1985, 6:58. No problem. 25th of June 1985. 6:58. I hope it's 6:58. Yeah, in the morning. Okay. Right. Okay, so Cancer rising, early Cancer rising in both tropical and sidereal zodiac. 25th of June 1985, 6:58 a.m. Portland, Oregon. Yeah, EL. Sorry, maybe we can just come back to your chart. It's also because of this packed eighth house. We have this indescribable burden, the burden that we won't be able to describe very easily. But there are practical ways to kind of feel unburdened, and that's through some kind of spiritual progress or practice, and also to actually cut things off that we really don't need in life. Because I'm sure you have carried too much of burden, especially with eighth house. You have had transformations, difficulties, financial difficulties, family level difficulties, and you know sudden ups and downs, major upheavals that kind of pushed you back at various situations in your life. So going to Allison, I hope your details are correct. It's 25th of June 1985, 6:58 a.m. Portland, Oregon, Cancer rising. Please let me know if it is correct. Yeah, it's because of the Ayanamsa. So I use the Raman Ayanamsa. So maybe that's because. Yeah, I know it's the transition is a little tricky. So I understand that Lahiri shows Gemini rising, late Gemini rising. So Cancer rising, Mars in the first house. Mars transit would have been a little challenging, and Mars is in the. I hope you did not get injured or, no heat related problems in the body in the past, in 2023 or late 2022. But I think there's something that's major that's going on in terms of communication, your efforts, and your financial conditions during this time. And you are living through this third house period, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is placed in the first house of Cancer. And Mercury is also very early in the sign. So maybe in other charts you might have Mercury in the first house of Gemini, with Gemini rising. But here you have Mercury in the first house of Cancer. So let's see what. So Mars is going to transit your third house, and Mars is also going to be conjunct your natal moon. So this is going to be a very emotionally driven period. So be it happiness or difficulty, I think there might be some expressiveness or excitement or emotions. Maybe you just need to contain all those things, and sometimes it's easier for us to promise too much out of excitement, or even in sadness we tend to kind of let out words emotionally and we may end up promising something. So that is something that you need to keep in your mind, so not to kind of overburden yourself with promises that you won't be able to keep. Venus is currently retrograde in your second house, but it might actually move back into the first house. So when Venus actually turns retrograde and enters, Venus is already retrograde, so when Venus enters Cancer, the late degrees of Cancer, it means that Venus is actually squaring the natal Venus. And this period has been, this past 1.5 years probably has been a very interesting and also a significant period for you because of the nodal return. And the Rahu is in Aries and Ketu is in Libra with Saturn. So especially related to the 10th house matters and the 4th house matters of your life, and Venus is there, so relationship is also one of the most important things. And the problem is not necessarily the problem, but the nature of this entire relationship is like submitting too much or too fast into a relationship. So when we actually see something that is good happening in a relationship, it is natural for us to kind of fall into the relationship and emotionally submit ourselves much earlier than we actually should. So that's probably, I don't know if that's what you're doing, but if that's what you have been doing, please try to not do that in the future, because we never know the kind of person that we are in touch with much earlier, because only when we actually live with the person or move closely with the person, we will see the complete person that we would want to see. So it will be important to not give in to this obsession over relationship or a particular person. And I'm not saying this in a bad sense or a bad way. I think we all have this kind of obsession towards something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be relationship. It could be obsession towards beauty or obsession towards profession, especially in your case. So obsession towards profession or work related matters, obsession towards creative thoughts, or maybe obsession towards charity and goodwill. So all these things really, you need to kind of balance all these things. So Ketu and Saturn from the fourth house are actually trying to limit and contract your surroundings or your environment. But on the other hand, you're trying to, maybe you're trying to expand, especially in the future. If you try to expand too much, there might be some forceful limitations that you might be subject to. So the best thing that you can do, especially taking this entire retrograde season into advantage, given the fact that Virgo is your profected sign and it's just started, and Mars is going to transit Virgo, it's the third house. So this is the time where you make conscious efforts to improve the rationale of your profession, of your financial situation, and your relationships. So there is this triangle that you want to kind of enhance, not necessarily improve, but enhance, so that you are in a better position to see the tomorrow, or maybe once this retrograde season is over. So you might feel that you are not in the right place at the right time, but when this retrograde season ends, especially when Saturn turns direct, Jupiter turns direct exactly on 1st of January 2024. So we still have a while, but until at least Saturn turns direct, you might have a little bit of difficulty in terms of seeing clarity. And Saturn is currently in your 8th house. So you are feeling a different kind of burden, this transformative or coming out of a major thing, and trying to focus on something more important, that could be your career or finance or relationships, whatever it is. These three are major things. So focusing your attention towards that without getting into conclusions and paying attention to minor details is going to help you in the long run. And by the time Saturn goes direct, you will be in a position to find yourself at the right place at the right time, to visualize things in a much better manner, probably in a much better manner than you actually imagined. Does that make sense? It's been extremely challenging couple of years, especially with chronic and losing friendships. Yeah, relationships. So as I mentioned in the beginning, so see, relationships would be a major thing. See, as I said, relationships are karmic. Okay. See, understand from this point of view, I think it will be a very, it's important to kind of put things into perspective. Career frustrations, that's a different thing. But when psychologically, when we are affected psychologically, especially in terms of relationships, be it friendships or whatever it is, we really don't have this clarity, or we won't be able to see with clarity in terms of what lies ahead. Yeah, sure. So Saturn is there in the 8th house currently. So I think this is the time for you to, and this retrograde period of Saturn is the time for you to kind of unload yourself and and kind of move forward. So maybe you can take down my email ID. I can suggest a few things for you. If, few materials for you to kind of come out of this mental agony, because I have faced that myself, and some of the things that I did really helped me. So I hope it helps you as well. But the best thing is to understand that relationships are karmic. So if something ends at some point of time, it is not meant for us beyond that, not before that. So obviously, only because it was meant for us, we were in that relationship, be it romantic relationship or friendship or whatever it is. But I think when it is ending, it is important to kind of let it go, because it means that something new is actually waiting for us, and that is an encouraging thought. So please focus on yourself and give some. With the third ruler in the first house, I think it's the right time for you to focus on yourself. The 12th house perfection, I understand 12th house perfection must have been really challenging. So now that somehow there is this chance of reviving yourself. I mean, you're probably in an identity crisis and you want to kind of revive yourself, and that will happen during the course of this year. And trust me, by the time next June comes, you might be a different person altogether. So it's just a matter of time when you realize that you need to spend time for yourself. I mean, no one is more important than yourself for you. If you don't take care of yourself, no one else really will. So put yourself ahead of everyone. Enlightened self-interest is the call that you should be getting at this point with your third ruler placed in the first house. So please focus on yourself and try to inculcate some practice like journaling, third house, writing. Try to write maybe a blog or something like that, or just communicate with someone. Or if you need a therapist, maybe you can just talk to a therapist. I'm sure that will help you. But things are going to improve. Trust me, Saturn's retrograde phase in the 8th house is really going to be revealing, and you will see things. You will have wisdom that you did not have all this while. So I'm sure things are going to improve. So I think we don't have any other charts. So if anyone has any general question, or if anyone wants to ask something personally, please. Oh, no worries. Maybe then uh, what you got from therapy. So yeah, things will improve. So please try to focus on yourself. Enlightened self-interest. Try to hit the gym or try to have a physical routine. Try to read or write something. Third house is reading and writing. So please focus on that, and that might be a diversion for you. So I think that is where things actually lie for you. So maybe you can focus on that. If anyone has any personal question that you want me to answer, please write an email to me, or otherwise, I think if no one has any other questions, if there is any general question, or if anyone has any other requests of a video or something like that, or any other live chat, please let me know. I think I'll be more than happy to do it. Okay, I think that will be all. I hope everyone has a good time. Thank you so much.